And that pin, we are welcome to move on to our next session of the presentation. A couple quick reminders if you're just joining us, keep your camera off and yourself muted for the most part. It helps us with the streaming back and forth. Also, if you need a certificate of attendance to prove for like faculty development, that sort of thing, please message me your email address in the chat and I will add you to the list and send that out at the end of the day. So with that, I am very excited to add to our presenters today. We are going to have Megan Scanlon here with CIDA, and I think she actually has a bunch of other people in there with her. So we'll let her introduce them. But this is just a informative little presentation about the accreditation process, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So quick information about Megan. She's worked for CIDA for 20 years and has been serving as the Director of Accreditation since 2006. She has undergraduate degrees in advertising and English from Michigan State University and a Master of Public Administration with a concentration in nonprofit leadership and administration from Western Michigan University. So with that, we will go ahead and turn the time over to Megan. I'll stop my screen share and Megan will let you take it from there.
Great, thank you so much. Hopefully everybody can hear me, and thank you so much for having us here today to talk with you. I am here in Chicago at a beautiful Herman Miller showroom where I have been meeting with CIDA's Accreditation Commission at one of their biannual meetings where they make decisions on accreditation. So I am joined today by Barbara Marini, who is the chair of our Accreditation Commission, as well as chair of the Interior Design Program at the University of Texas at Arlington. So we're going to talk about the accreditation process. Barb will be able to talk specifically about the Accreditation Commission's role in that process. And then we'll be able to take questions that you may have about CIDA and about the accreditation process. So I'm going to try to move through this process piece as quickly as possible so that we can spend time on your questions. But just to kind of start and give an overview of the organization, we are the specialized accreditor for interior design programs at colleges and universities throughout North America and internationally. If you look at our website, you will see some international programs there. Our mission is to advance the interior design profession as the definitive source for quality standards and accreditation in higher education. So CIDA was actually established in 1970, and at that time, the name was FIDER, or the Foundation for Interior Design Education Research. Fast forward to the present day, we have a new name, and we now have 169 accredited interior design programs. We have a 9-member board of directors that's composed of representatives from all of the major interior design organizations. We have a representative of industry, a representative of accredited programs, a representative of CIDA volunteers, and a public representative on the board as well. And our board is responsible for maintaining relationships within the interior design community and for securing funds and resources for the organization. Then we have a separate group that is the Accreditation Commission that's responsible for making all of the decisions on accreditation for interior design programs. And there are 7 members on the Accreditation Commission. There is 1 representative of the public. There is 1 representative of accredited programs. So that is somebody who is a program chair but has not served as a CIDA reviewer and is there representing strictly that program perspective on the commission. And then the remainder of our commissioners are educators and practitioners who served as CIDA site visitors and were then invited to join the Accreditation Commission. We also have approximately 100 site visitors who conduct the actual program reviews. And
Hey,
those
Megan,
yes,
if you're advancing slides, we're still only seeing your first
I'm
slide.
still on the same. I'm
Okay,
still on the same slide.
just wanted to make sure.
Yep. So, yes, we have 100 site visitors drawn from education and practice. So I'm going to just go through each step of the process here. So for any program that is interested in becoming CIDA accredited, the process is voluntary. So programs reach out to us in order to learn more about that and to get started. Our website is a great resource for programs. So if you are from a program that's interested in going through the process, or if you are from a currently accredited program, I definitely recommend familiarizing yourself with the information that's available on our website. You can find all of our policy and procedure there, announcements about important initiatives. For instance, there is currently a community review and comment period going on for proposed changes to the standards. So definitely go to the website, look around, see what's available there. And then once a program has decided they would like to go through the accreditation process, they need to submit an application. And the application is what a program uses to demonstrate that they are eligible to go through the process. And you see here on this slide are eligibility requirements. So in order for a program to be able to go
Megan,
through
we're still just seeing your main slide. We're not seeing your presentation mode.
oh. Heidi, do you have my presentation?
I do. Would you like me to pull it up for you?
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be best because it's
Not a
changing
problem.
on my screen, so I don't know why it's not changing on yours. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. That's why we had you send them to me just in case. Which slide
Okay,
to start on?
next one, next one, next one. Here we go. Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. So in order for a program to be eligible to go through the accreditation process, the program needs to show that they are housed in an institution with the appropriate institutional recognition. So in the United States, that means recognition by one of the regional accreditors. In Canada, that means recognition by one of the provincial ministries of education. And for international programs, that can mean a variety of things. A program needs to culminate in a minimum of a bachelor's degree in order to be eligible to go through the process. And a program needs to include 30 semester credit hours of general education courses. And we do define general education in our policy and procedure. That would actually be found in section 4 of our policy and procedure, which is focused specifically on applying for accreditation. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. A program needs to have graduated 2 classes of students. And then programs need to collect and publish student achievement data that talks about attrition and retention, graduation rates, job placement rates, and acceptance into graduate programs. So that same section of our policy and procedure that I referenced does include some additional guidelines about that student achievement data. So definitely look through those guidelines. And for programs that are currently accredited, it's really important for you to check your website to make sure that you have that student achievement data published somewhere that's easily accessible, and to make sure that that information is up to date. We do go through and check to make sure that all programs are publishing that several times a year, and that is an eligibility requirement that programs need to remain in compliance with. We can go to the next slide. So this is just a chart that basically shows the accreditation process graphically. So the accreditation process includes program, self-study, and then peer review. Those are the primary components of accreditation. So we're going to talk about program self-study in more detail. Could you go to the next slide? And then the next one. Sorry. So we do encourage programs to engage in regular self-study. It's really one of the cornerstones of accreditation. If a program is regularly engaged in self-study and in assessment activities, you should have a very clear understanding of how and where your program is addressing the CIDA standards within your curriculum. Our policy and procedure includes a section focused specifically on self-study. It's called Guidance for Self-Study. So if you're new to assessment, I definitely recommend spending some time with that, as it will give you suggestions for designing a process that's going to meet the unique needs of your program. If you want to go to the next slide. And so self-study is something that programs do on their own, that they do individually, but then when you are going through the accreditation process, you need to communicate the results of your self-study in a report, which we call the program analysis report. That is due 8 weeks prior to an accreditation review. And that report really is your evaluation team and CIDA's introduction to your program. So it's going to provide institutional and program data, and it's going to include really important contextual information, information about your institution, the history of your program, information about the self-study process that you underwent in preparation for the review. And then your program is asked to talk about your compliance with each of the 16 CIDA standards. So that is the information that a team uses to prepare to travel to your campus and conduct their evaluation. So it's a really critical piece of the accreditation process. And we do host virtual workshops for programs, and we will have a workshop that's focused specifically on self-study and on creating the self-study report. So keep an eye out for announcements about our virtual workshops, because we have faculty present and share examples of what they put together for an accreditation review. If you want to go to the next slide. And yes. So the entire accreditation process really kicks off about a year in advance. Like I was saying, your program should be engaged in self-study and assessment continuously. And then a year in advance of an accreditation review, you're going to receive a letter from us letting you know that you're scheduled for a review. And that is when we will begin forming a team and really talking to you about the details of the review. A lot of programs are putting together virtual student work displays, especially after the pandemic, with most student work being submitted virtually. That can be a really nice way for programs to display all of their student learning outcomes. So about a year in advance, you can expect to have a conversation with CIDA staff about what your student work display might look like for your accreditation review. Because if you're planning on displaying the majority of your materials virtually, what we will likely do is ask you to provide your team with access to that display about a month in advance of the actual campus-based portion of the accreditation review so that they can get started looking at those materials. And then their time on campus will actually be a little bit shorter because they will have already started reviewing information. And then for programs who are displaying the majority of their evidence in some physical format, it would be a more traditional campus-based review, and we would form a team based on that. So we do have a policy that's available on our website focused specifically on site visits. I definitely recommend spending a lot of time with that particular policy piece because it includes information about what the site visit schedule will look like, and then it includes our student work display guidelines. And those are critical in terms of informing you about how you should proceed in getting organized for your review. If you could go to the next slide. So then we ask your program to submit possible dates for the review. We put together a team using your dates, and we're also trying to find team members who are going to be an appropriate match for your program. So we're looking at team member backgrounds and at important program characteristics and putting a team together based on that. Once we do have a review team put together, we do send programs the names and abbreviated credentials of their proposed team members. And you're asked to look at that information and to approve your team, the composition of your team in writing. And about 6 months in advance of when you're going to be reviewed, that's a really critical time to be working on that self-study program analysis report. You really don't want to leave that till the last minute. It's important to spend some time with that report. We do provide you with templates, and there are instructions that are built right into the report template. So really spending time with that document, doing several drafts, engaging faculty in that process so that everybody has an opportunity to provide input and to make sure that it really becomes a rich source of information for your team. And then 6 months prior, it's also going to be really important for you to be looking at the evidence that you've collected for your review, looking at that as you're putting together your report and figuring out whether you have collected enough information, and figuring out an organizational method for that. Are you going to be putting together a primarily physical display? And if so, what is that going to look like? Where is it going to be housed on your campus? Oftentimes, it's really important for programs to reserve the appropriate space well in advance because space on campus can be limited. And when a team comes to campus, they should have a private space where they can be reviewing your materials and working. They should have audio privacy so that they can have conversations. So making sure that those spaces are secured. If you're putting together a primarily virtual display, they'll still need a space on campus where they can work. And it will be really important to have the appropriate IT resources in support for a virtual display. Because even if you are displaying these materials virtually, the team needs to be able to have access during that review. It can't be a situation where something's not working. It's extremely important to make sure all of that is up and running for the review. We can go, oh, and before I move on, actually, in terms of organizing and preparing to put together your student work display, definitely spend some time with our student work display guidelines, and those are available on our website. Some important highlights to keep in mind is that the work that you put in your display needs to be current. And we define that as work that was completed within the past 3 years. You need to organize your student work display by curriculum sequence, not by CIDA standard. So there should be a table or a space for each course where those materials are available for a team to look at. Or if you're doing a virtual student work display, a folder of some sort for each course. In terms of student work, your display should provide multiple examples because the point is to provide the team with a representative sample. They need to see that more than just one student got that topic or that concept. So we define a representative sample as about 30% of your student work, or a minimum of 3 examples of all of the different types of student learning outcomes that are produced in your courses. And then you're going to want to have extra student work available as well as a backup, because there are always going to be requests for additional information during the review process. So spending some time with those student work display guidelines is really important. And we are going to be offering some virtual workshop sessions for programs focused on the student work display. So if that is a topic that you're interested in, we have faculty present and show examples of how they organize their display. And that's always really a useful resource for programs. All right, if you want to advance the slide. And so 2 months out from your review, your self-study report is due. That is also when you are going to be working closely with the CIDA office and with your team to get a lot of the logistical details of your review finalized. So we do have a sample site visit schedule that we'll provide to your program, and you'll be asked to stick very closely to that sample, but it'll help you put together a schedule for your team to review and approve. Your team will let you know how they would like the interviews to be organized with students and faculty. We'll also begin getting all of the travel details for the visit worked out and confirmed. So we take care of getting our team members from their home to your host city. And then once they arrive, your program is responsible for organizing all of the ground transportation, lodging, and meals. And then if your program is doing a virtual student work display, we ask you to provide your team with access to that display about 1 month in advance of their actual time on campus. Again, so that they can get started reviewing those materials. Going through virtual student work just takes longer than when they are looking at physical samples. So that really is the purpose of giving them that advanced access to a virtual display. All right, we can advance to the next slide. So during an actual accreditation review, the team is spending the majority of their time reviewing your student work display. So that is going to take place for at least 2 full days. They're also going to spend time interviewing students, interviewing faculty, and interviewing program administration. And those interviews are information gathering sessions. It's just another opportunity for the team to learn about your program, to learn about your approach to delivering an interior design education, and to ask questions and find evidence. The team will also observe a course. It's really nice if they can observe a studio course, especially if there are any critiques going on or if they have an opportunity to hear students talk about a project. That can be a very rich source of information for your team. They'll want to tour your facilities, and then the team will spend time in the evenings engaged in their own work sessions. They'll be working as a group to talk about all of the information they're looking through, and they will be working on writing their report. And then your review will end with exit interviews, and we call them an interview, but it's almost like an exit summary. They'll provide your institutional administration and then program faculty with an overview of their findings before they depart campus. We can go on to the next slide and then the next one. Thank you. So the team is going to communicate the results of their evaluation in a report, which we call the visiting team report. And the purpose of that report is to present the evidence and the rationale for their recommendations. And so the team is going to be considering your self-study report and then all of the information that was collected during that review process as they're writing their own report. And that report goes through an extensive editing and review process that I'll talk about in a bit more detail in a moment. That report is going to include some introductory information where they're going to talk about your self-study and your display and whether those things were organized. Then they are going to go through and talk about their evaluation of your program's compliance with each of the 16 standards. So the team marks check boxes for all of the different student learning and program expectations so that your program will be able to go through and see whether you addressed those specific expectations sufficiently. And then they provide a narrative. And that report will include their recommendation for accreditation. And I say recommendation because that's exactly what it is. The team is documenting evidence and making recommendations, but that is not the final decision. It is our accreditation commission that makes final decisions on accreditation. If you could go to the next slide. So the team's report is due in our office about a week after the review is over. And once the report has been received, it goes through an extensive editing process, and that begins with CIDA staff. We go through and we make sure that the report is formatted correctly and that it reads nicely, that we're fixing grammatical errors. We also start to make note of any areas where we have questions about the content of the report. And at that point, we engage 2 readers from our accreditation commission who also take a look at the report and let us know if there are any questions that should go to the team, if there's anything that's unclear in that document. So we send all of our questions back to the team. They take another look at their report and make sure that all of our questions are addressed. And once that editing process has taken place, the report will go to the program for review. So you're typically getting a draft report about 6 to 8 weeks after your accreditation review. And you're asked to go through the report and let us know if there are any factual errors in the report, like something isn't spelled correctly or there's an incorrect course number. You're also asked to address any concerns that you have with the content in the report. So if the team has said something is a weakness and you disagree, that is your opportunity to respond to that. So this is a layer of peer review that's built into the accreditation process. The team has had an opportunity to review information and document that, and then it's the program's opportunity to comment on that. And that just helps us ensure that the report is as clear and accurate as possible. If your program does have concerns with the content of the report and you address those concerns in writing, that information will go to the team, and the team will be asked to provide some sort of response. Sometimes team members will decide to make changes to the report based on program content concerns. Or sometimes the teams will provide a written response. They'll say, you know, we stand by our original recommendation for this reason, and this reason. So those are some different options there, but that's just another layer of review that's taking place, that's helping us make sure that it is a clear reflection of what was available on site. After all of that has taken place, we do send team reports and any program responses to a group of trained CIDA site visitors. And those site visitors are asked to review the report and to review the program's response if they provided one, and comment on whether or not they feel that the narrative in the report supports the team's recommendation for accreditation. And again, that's just another layer of peer review that helps us ensure that the report is clear and consistent, and that we're applying our standards consistently. We can go to the next slide. And so our accreditation commission receives all of this information leading up to a meeting. So for every program that was reviewed in a given season, our accreditation commission receives the program self-study report, the visiting team report, any program response to the visiting team report, and then comments about that report from our trained site visitors. And the Accreditation Commission considers all of that information when they're making a final decision on accreditation. And that final decision really is the culmination of that peer review process. The commission is the group that is ultimately responsible for making clear and consistent decisions on accreditation that are supported by that written record. And they need to make decisions that are consistent from program to program and from season to season. So the commission's role in that process is very important. And this is where I'm going to ask Barb Marini, our commission chair, to just take a minute to talk a bit more.
Thank you, Megan. Thanks for having us present today. So as Megan mentioned, I'm the commission chair, and I'm the program representative on the commission. And we get a lot of questions about our process and what does the commission do. So I just wanted to highlight a few things for everyone. Our role is to ensure consistency in the standards, interpretation, and decision-making across programs and all types of programs. We know that programs can vary in mission and philosophy and structure, and we embrace that. And the commission understands this and considers the different nuances of each program with respect to meeting standards, and it allows programs to sort of develop those uniquely in individual ways. Our goal is to embrace these differences, but make decisions in the context of the standards. And so this individuality that happens from program to program is a benefit of interior design education. And it actually allows students a lot of opportunity and choice in where they want to attend school. But in our process in determining consistency, we use a similar process in terms of all decisions that are asked of us in terms of site visit postponements for various reasons. We look to past precedent for again, consistency in this process. And the CIDA team at the office has an amazing process of documenting precedents. And so when we have a question about, have we done this before, or what's our precedent, and what's the guidance for making this exception, or whatever it might be, we always go back and look to see what's been done in the past to ensure this consistency. And it's very rare that something pops up that we haven't experienced before. But although COVID was an unperfect example, let's say, of how we had to sort of retool the process and look at some different things. When we read the reports, each one of us on the commission, we read all the reports from each visit, and each one of us is assigned a teammate or a partner to report on any number of programs in our review process, which we're going through in this meeting. We go through every report in detail from the very beginning to the very end, and we look at what the team recommends. And sometimes in the process, the commission makes changes to the reports, or let's say minor edits. We're asked on occasion to explain these processes and why we might make edits. And it's through the lens of making sure that we are dealing with reports in the essence of, fairness and equity, and things that are documented across all types of programs. We might see things that are maybe a different level of student learning outcome or program expectation that has a different view of what the visiting team might have. Sometimes the visiting team that is composed of 3 visitors, and different ones are writing different parts of the report. So sometimes we will see something in a standard that was actually written in a different section that might change an outcome to the benefit of the program. So we look at these things holistically as a team, as a group, with a benchmark of precedence, and in the essence of clarity in terms of how the reports go back to each individual school, each individual program, to make the most, to make the best of the situation where we can have a process that is documented and again, fair for all. We don't go back and review student work, and we take what the teams write at the value that they write. We don't change their interpretation. Our editing process is to be consistent with the language that's in the standard. And right now we have just gone through an update into the visiting team reports that it helps the visiting teams write more specifically in terms of how each program is addressing each individual standards. So that's helping us in our process, so that we can understand through the lens of what the team is writing, what did they see. Again, we don't review student work. We go back and benchmark some of the things about the nuances of the program with the program reports, the PAR reports that you all are writing. But we don't change anything like that, and we don't go back and look at student work. So sometimes the program would ask to submit additional materials. The commission's job is not to do that. It's to make fair and equitable decisions based on what we see in the report that we get from the visiting team. And as Megan mentioned, in the process before we get the reports, each program has a chance to respond to the preliminary report that we all get when the visiting team leaves campus. So every program has a pretty good idea when the team leaves campus what the outcomes of the report are going to be. And then we take straw votes at the end of each report, and then at the end of our process we make motions to accept individual programs visiting team reports in terms of accreditation, an interim visit, or program accreditation denial. So there are really three outcomes at the end of that process. I think that's pretty much it. We just mostly look for consistency in course titles, project names and numbers, and things like that. And one thing that I do want to mention very quickly is when you're preparing your display of student work, it's really good for the teams to have a benchmark across the curriculum of student learning outcomes. Sometimes a course might be focused on particular standards. For example, business practices and professionalism. Sometimes there's a dedicated course, but in general, we like to see the standards embedded throughout the curriculum at various levels. So I think that's one of the things that we also look for. So I'll turn it back to Megan now.
Great, thank you so much, Barb. And we can go to the next slide. So once the commission has met and made final decisions on accreditation, we do make an announcement to the public and update the information that's available on our website. So for any of you who are on our electronic distribution list, you'll be seeing an announcement go out early next week about this most recent round of accreditation decisions. And if you don't get emails from us, let me know so that we can get you added to that list so that you do see important announcements and notifications go out. We do post the final accreditation decision letters for programs on our list of accredited programs on the website. So that's something important for you to know as well. And then if we want to go to the next slide, which I believe is my last slide. Monitoring. As an accreditor, we are responsible for ensuring that programs remain in compliance with our standards and with our eligibility requirements throughout a 6-year term of accreditation. So all programs are required to submit a progress report at the midpoint of a term of accreditation, so after 3 years. Some programs may need to have some sort of focused visit as a condition of accreditation. That's something that our accreditation commission would decide. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we go through and conduct checks to make sure programs are in compliance with those eligibility requirements. So specifically, we're always looking to make sure that programs are posting that student achievement data on their websites. So I think that brings us to the end of the presentation in that we have some time for questions. So I don't know, Heidi, how you have been handling questions. If people can just unmute and ask, I'm fine with that. Or
yeah, both. There's an unmute and they can ask, they can put it in the chat, and then we do have a Q&A section, and we actually already have a question in the Q&A session, which I think you lightly touched on, but let's get a clear answer. It's from Paula, and she says, what's the best way to be informed of upcoming accreditation workshop sessions or other than checking the website? Is there a mailing list we can join? And if not, when can we find one that will be posted?
Yes, so please do email me if you do not get emails from CIDA already. And my email address is Megan, MEGAN, at accredit-id.org. My email address is on the website as well, and I can make sure that you get added to our distribution list because yes, we do make announcements for virtual accreditation workshops and all sorts of different opportunities. And I anticipate running a series of virtual workshops in late January and early February of 2024. So I definitely recommend participating in those. We will have workshops focused on self-study, on the standards, and on organizing a student work display.
Okay, another question from Dan in the chat says, anticipating the release of new standards for 2024, what can we expect for the release or preview of these new standards?
Yes, so on our website, under announcements, there is an announcement about the current community review and comment period. So if you go to that announcement, you can see the draft standards revisions that are being proposed. I definitely encourage everybody to spend some time with that document. I believe the review and comment is on the 18th. So you still have time to take a look at the draft revisions that are being proposed. You have time to submit comments if you have comments on any of those. And then looking at the draft revisions will give you a very good idea of what the final version will look like, because often the version that becomes the final version looks very similar to the draft version. So definitely take a look at that.
So Megan, I'm on the website now. Can you repeat
Mhm.
one more time where to go on that?
Go to announcements. And do you see the CIDA calls for community comment? If you click on that, yes, that brings you to the information that you're looking for. Just read through there, and I believe there are a couple links that you need to click to see the draft revisions and then to submit those comments. So once this community review and comment period closes on October 18th, the standards committee will take a look at all of the comments that we've received, and they'll decide whether they need to make any further changes. Then that will go to our board of directors, and we anticipate the final version of Professional Standards 2024 being ready for publication in January of 2024, early January.
Thank you. And Dan Beert has a question. He says, is it possible that all student evidence be presented virtually? Not likely, but wondering about the nature of what will be presented on campus.
Yes, so a number of programs have done fully virtual displays. That's absolutely possible. It's really important to spend time designing a virtual display method that's going to be effective for site visitors to be able to conduct their review. So we will have a session focused specifically on organizing a virtual display when we do our virtual sessions in January. So if that's something that you're interested in, I definitely recommend attending that session and hearing about some of the methods that programs have used successfully. Often the simplest method is the clearest method. So it's always really nice to see some examples of what programs do. And if your program puts a virtual, then we will ask you for access about a month prior to when your team actually travels to campus, because then the team
Megan, just really quick. As you're backing away from your computer, your audio is cutting out. So if you could just.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So if you're doing a fully virtual display, we ask you to provide the team with access a month in advance so that they can get started conducting that review. And then their time on campus is spent collaborating with one another, conducting interviews with administrators, and working with you to figure out what evidence they need to see to finish up their review. So often results in a shorter amount of time for a team at your campus, but they still do travel to the campus for those sessions and for that important collaboration with one another and with your program.
Yeah, so I think if you can just turn your computer directly towards you so that the mic is picking up, it's still just cutting out just a little bit.
Sorry. Okay.
That is already much better.
Okay. Okay. Great. Were there any other questions?
We still have 4 to 9 minutes, depending on how long you guys want of a break. So please feel free. I know you all have questions about CIDA because it's the number one thing that we all think about in our sleep as we're falling asleep at night, I'm sure. So please take a moment, put those in the chat. We'll take a few more.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, that's fine. Like I said, we'll be offering virtual sessions. Those are often enormously beneficial for program faculty. It's really nice to be able to see actual examples of what we've talked about today, to see how a program has put together a display, or to see how a program has put together a successful self-study report. So I definitely recommend attending those. Please visit our website and take a look at those proposed revisions to the standards and participate in that comment period. And otherwise, thank you so much for listening today and for having us. And if you ever have any questions about any aspect of the process, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Megan. We'll go ahead and take a little break then. And our next presentation will start at noon Pacific time. So that gives you 8 minutes. You can run to the restroom, come back, and we will continue after that. We've got 4 more presentations. So thank you.